Welcome back, Defenders. I had a very interesting weekend. This weekend, I traveled to Phoenix, Arizona for a Green Bay Packers game with my father and uncle. Fantastic game, the Green Bay Packers won. But prior to leaving on Friday, I sent out this tweet. Let me read this for you. Pete Hegseth showed up to the White House meeting today with President Zelensky wearing a Russian tricolor flag tie. These people love Putin and Russia. This is Pete Hegseth, clearly wearing a Russian tricolor flag tie. White, blue, red. White, blue, red. The tie is designed so that when you tie it, it properly displays white at the top. These are Russia's colors. White, blue, red. If you Google Russian flag tie, this is pretty much what you get. There's not a lot you can do with Russia's simple flag of just 3 colors. Now, yes, there are lots of flags in the world that use red, white, and blue. The UK, France, the Netherlands, and the United States. But when you Google American flag tie, you're not going to find this tie that Pete Hegseth wore. American flag ties always have stars. The stripes are usually just red and white. You're not going to find Pete Hegseth's tie in these search results because it's not an American flag tie. But the White House disagrees with me. This is Vice President JD Vance, quote, retweeting me on Twitter. For the first time, JD Vance has 4.7 million followers, and this quote retweet of my post, for him, got 202,000 likes, 17,000 retweets, and over 10 million impressions. Because I had the Vice President's attention, I decided to tweet at him. It has been 10 months of Putin wasting everyone's time and refusing to agree to Trump's ceasefire offers. When is President Trump going to make the killing stop and finally show real strength instead of complete weakness before Putin? Let me know what you think of my response to my Vice President taking the time to quote retweet me, some B-tier YouTuber. That's how insecure these guys are. But it didn't stop there. The White House social media account Rapid Response 47. This is an official government account. It has the gray checkmark. It has the White House logo on it. It has 1.2 million followers. And they also, quote, retweeted me. Isn't it humiliating so publicly admitting that you're a weapons-grade moron? The White House called me a weapons-grade moron. Here's my response. An official White House government account called me a weapons-grade moron. They must have looked up my military service history and decided to show me respect by saying weapons-grade. I think there's a patch idea somewhere in there, guys. But it didn't stop there. Because JD Vance highlighted my post about Pete Hegseth's tie, Kremlin State TV picked up my tweets. And for the first time, I appeared on Kremlin State TV. So let's watch the clip together from Russian Media Monitor.
Вот что-то я не знал про Хексета. Что-то я не знал. Но когда Хексет приходит на встречу с Зеленским в таком галстуке, то хочется сказать: капитану Хексету срочно погоны! Майором будешь! При этом JD Vance попытался сказать: ну прекратите, это же также и цвета американского флага, на что злые...
There it is. That is my profile picture, that is my name, that is my Twitter handle appearing on Kremlin State TV. And they obviously translated my tweet into Russian. This says, these guys love Putin and Russia. Let's finish the clip.
Люди тут же выложили откуда-то с сайта, где это продается, что галстук в цветах российского флага. То есть так он и отмаркирован. Я вам так скажу. Но каждое 9 мая, особенно 23 февраля, мы знаем, что делает Хексет. Ой.
You'll notice in this clip the Russians didn't disagree with what I said. They basically confirmed it, and they're joking they know what Pete Hegseth is doing on May 9th and February 23rd. May 9th is obviously Victory Day Parade, and February 23rd is Defender of the Fatherland Day. This was a fun distraction for me over the weekend, but I'm not the story, guys. I do think this is beneficial that I'm getting the White House's attention and the Kremlin's attention. It draws more people to my social media, my posts, my videos, my commentary. That's a good thing. But no, we should be focusing on the war, because this is what's actually important. So let's get back to talking about Russian oil refineries being blown up. Bringing Russia back to reality, Ukraine strikes Russian oil refineries almost every day. This is President Zelensky. Ukrainian drones spark massive fire at Rosneft's major oil refinery in Samara's Novokubieshevsk. This is where this refinery is located. I think it's about 800 kilometers from Ukraine's border. And this is the initial pictures and videos we get. This is a relatively small town next to the refinery. And the CDU-11, with a capacity of 18,000 metric tons of fuel per day, was damaged in the attack. The CDU-9 was already shut down from a previous attack. This is a picture showing the refinery still on fire the next day. So this was another big hit for the Russians. Let's go to the bingo board. And here is the refinery. It's located in the Samara Oblast. It can produce 7.9 million tons of refined products per year. Ukraine has struck it a total of 4 times, but 3 times in the last 2.5 months. This refinery's taken some damage. Beyond that, Ukraine is also appropriately going after gas plants. Ukrainian drones ignite one of Russia's largest gas plants, 1,200 kilometers from the front lines. This is the Orenburg facility, and it's currently on fire. If you want to see the video, I'll link it down below, but this is a gas plant going up in flames, and it's pretty bad. Giant Russian gas plant suspends intake from Kazakhstan after Ukrainian drone strike. This is the Orenburg gas processing plant, the largest facility of its kind in the entire world, and it's been forced to suspend intakes of gas from Kazakhstan because of this Ukrainian drone attack. Sorry for Kazakhstan, but this gas plant has to go. The facility, operated by Gazprom, has an annual processing capacity of 45 billion cubic meters and handles gas condensate from their own oil fields, but then also Kazakhstan's. But they're going to have to shut down the inputs, because I'm guessing repairs are going to take a while. Ukraine's October strike left Feodosia oil terminal crippled. Russia may never be able to repair it. This was the Feodosia oil terminal in Crimea, and Ukraine struck it several times over 2 weeks, and I don't think Russia is getting this facility back anytime soon. Here's the satellite time-lapse. This is October of 2022, when nothing was wrong with the facility. November of 2022, Russia installs air defense systems at this oil terminal. Fast forward to August 22nd, so this was 3 or 4 weeks ago. This was after the first rounds of strike. This refinery, or this terminal, was on fire for 4 or 5 days. Russia was able to put the fire out. Ukraine then struck it again, and this is what the satellite images are showing us. This is the detailed analysis saying that 22 out of 33 tanks went up in flames, and others appear to be damaged. This is bad. This is very bad, especially for the residents of Crimea. Additionally, Ukraine struck another oil depot, this also on the Crimean Peninsula, but it's a smaller one. This is near the city of Givedartsky. And Ukraine is eventually going to get them all. You're not going to be able to store anything that's flammable on the Crimean Peninsula by the end of this year. Here are the results. Fuel shortages reach Russian drivers. Ukraine's refinery strikes trigger the worst price spike in 15 years. These pictures and videos go viral every day of gas stations without gasoline, or at least record high prices that Russians have never paid before. The videos are also online, and these shortages in regions or cities, they're not permanent. It's not like a Russian city is without gasoline forever. Gas stations will not get their deliveries. They'll be out for a couple days. They then get a delivery. People are texting which gas station in town now has fuel, and everyone races to go fill up their cars. Not very sustainable, not very, I'm sure, conducive to going about your daily life. Here is a time lapse, more or less, showing when first reported there were shortages in each region, going back to mid-August, but now we're almost 3 months into this new campaign, and the shortages are everywhere. Things are not going to get better for the Russians ever, and 3 months from now, this is going to be devastating. Ukraine's only been doing this for almost 3 months. What's this map going to look like in 6? I think the residents of Moscow and St. Petersburg are going to find out. Here is the Defense Intelligence Chief, Budanov, saying that the strategy is working. I'm going to read for you what he said at this public forum. These strikes on Russian oil refineries have had a greater impact than the sanctions did. That's a mathematical fact. Through direct action, we have inflicted far greater damage on the revenues of the Russian Federation than any economically significant measures introduced so far. That's also an unpleasant truth, because it leads us to the next conclusion, that it's still not enough. I mean the sanctions pressure. It is insufficient, and if things continue as they are now, it won't have enough of an impact to change the world view of the Russian Federation. But together with what we are doing, it will, and already does, produce results. Sanctions alone was never going to defeat the government of Russia. Decades of sanctions has not defeated the government of Iran. Decades of sanctions has not defeated the government of North Korea. But combine this with kinetic strikes on energy infrastructure, oil depots and oil refineries and gas terminals. Yes, this is the winning formula. We can always do more sanctions, and Ukraine is going to continue striking as much as they can to make the Russians stop this war. Ukrainian drones reportedly strike electrical substation in Russia's Ulyanovsk Oblast. We're not really getting good pictures and videos because a lot of these substations are in the middle of nowhere. But every night, Ukraine is launching dozens, if not hundreds, of drones into Russia. And they are hitting stuff. So this is a map kind of showing where some of these 500 to 750 kilovolt substations are located. And Ukraine's going after them to cut off power supplies to, I'm assuming, probably Russian military installations, but I don't know specifically what they're targeting with these strikes. We do get the occasional picture or video showing a fire in the distance, but any Russian who takes pictures or videos and posts it online, they get punished. They get disappeared. Worst of all, they get drafted and then sent to Ukraine. Another piece of bad news, Russia shot down its own fighter jet over Crimea during a drone attack. This was a Su-30, and what I'm assuming is happening is the Russians are copying the Ukrainians. When Russia launches their own drone attacks, Ukrainian F-16s take to the skies to intercept them. They try to shoot as many down with planes because it's cheaper than an air defense missile. So now that Ukraine is going on the offensive, frequently striking inside Russia and Crimea, I'm guessing the Russians attempted to send out a fighter jet to shoot down drones, and then they were shot down by their own air defense system. It's probably going to keep happening. Russian regions face deepening budget crisis as reserves run dry. The red alarms have been sounding for months, but it just keeps getting worse. Russia's regions are facing a looming fiscal crisis as falling tax revenues and mounting expenses has forced local governments to exhaust nearly all their financial reserves. This is one region, the Arkhangelsk region, has about 1 million citizens, and they're down to 50 million rubles in their state budget account. This is the equivalent of 620,000 US dollars, or just 0.03% of their annual budget. They're 3/4 of the way through the year and completely out of money. And I'm guessing they were trying to conserve, knowing this was going to be a tough year. But this is all the regions. They're all telling Putin that tax revenue is falling, inflation is terrible, expenses are up, and none of these cities or oblasts are solvent anymore. The Kremlin doesn't have an answer for this. Russia to face nearly a $100 billion deficit in 2026. This is according to President Zelensky. Russia has to make it to 2026 first, but currently this year, as of 1 month ago, their budget deficit for the year is already 71 billion US dollars. And everything in Russia is getting worse. And this is what they're kind of saying on Kremlin State TV. I can't believe they said this, guys, but I'm going to read this clip, and you're not going to believe what language they're using. Here's what this commentator on Solovyov's show is saying. In reality, our state is weak. It's weak. It was created to be weak. It was created in the 1990s in such a way that some oligarch or some person could influence how the state would continue to operate. Naturally, this weak state now needs to be strengthened somehow. There is no need to wait until the war is over. Solovyov is going to jump in. Not a weak state, but a weak construction. That is, its architecture itself. We have strong presidential power. That's where I was leading to. The state on which this power stands, this structure, this basis, it is weak. When a huge number of the president's orders go ignored because officials can find it easy to do nothing, knowing the results of inaction, like with oil refineries and so on, correct? The state can't do anything because it doesn't have a mechanism to force this official to do something. It's even scarier than that. In the 1990s, we built it in such a way that gaps of irresponsibility were formed when there is simply no one responsible there. We still think that the ministers manage the sectors they're named for, but that's not even close to reality. The architecture of your state is weak, Russia. It's weak. And you're stealing my bit for yourself on Kremlin State TV. It's pretty hilarious. Not random anymore. Russia targets Ukraine's power and gas by region, according to Ukraine's energy minister. Russia launches 6 major attacks on DTEK coal facilities over the last 2 months. As Russia's full-scale invasion approaches its 4th winter, Moscow has revived its efforts to cripple Ukraine's energy sector. So Russia is focusing on coal production and coal refining because they want to deprive Ukrainians of the ability to burn coal for electric power. This is what Ukraine is doing. This looks like a pretty heavy-duty structure, but this is what one fortification looks like to protect an energy node in the close to the border regions. But what they're saying is, after months of trying to disconnect and destabilize Ukraine's entire energy system, Russia has changed tactics to target power and gas infrastructure serving specific oblasts close to the front, rather than attempting to collapse the entire system. Russia has failed to cause blackouts and complete energy loss in all of Ukraine's major cities. So they're scaling back their ambitions, and they're specifically targeting areas like Sumy and Kharkiv and Donetsk, trying to go after closer targets. But also, they're just trying to find success somewhere. Because after almost 4 years, Ukraine still finds a way to keep the lights on. How they're doing it, I'm not entirely sure, but it's pretty incredible. Okay, here's the politics part, and everything in the last 4 days was insane. I'm sorry, but this is going to sound insane because it is. Zelensky urges allies against appeasing Russia after U.S. trip. Zelensky sat in this meeting in the White House, and it was an ambush. For the last couple weeks, Pete Hegseth and Trump were saying positive things. We might send Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine, and that never made sense to me. And now we understand it was just leverage. Trump was lying and making stuff up. One, to get positive press from the Western allies, but he was trying to put pressure on Putin to get something. Trump deliberately scheduled a phone call with Putin the day before meeting Zelensky to get offered something. What did Trump want on this phone call with Putin? I'm sure Trump would like Putin to spend billions of dollars on his crypto coin. Just give him money. That's the only thing Trump really cares about. But as soon as he spoke with Putin, he immediately turned on Ukraine again. This back and forth, Trump just uses one side to try and leverage the other to get some kind of concession. In call with Trump, Putin demands full control of Donetsk Oblast that he has failed to conquer after 11 years of war. So Trump put out this tweet after speaking with Putin and then meeting with Zelensky. The meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine was very interesting and cordial, but I told him, as I likewise strongly suggested to Putin, it's time for a deal. Enough of the killing. Let both sides claim victory. No more shooting. This is a war that would have never started if I were president. Thousands are being slaughtered every week. No more. Go home to your families in peace. Ukraine would love to go home to their families in peace, but Russia is the aggressor. Russia's trying to steal their homes. They're trying to steal land that their homes and families are currently on. If Ukraine could go home in peace, they would have done it by now. Trump, through maps, cursed at Zelensky while demanding Ukraine cede the entirety of Donbass to Russia. Trump reportedly warned Zelensky that Putin could destroy Ukraine if no deal was reached. This is from the Financial Times, and they're citing a European official, but that means Ukrainian. One of the members of Zelensky's delegation in that meeting talked to reporters confidentially, and they're citing that person as a European official. So Trump told Zelensky that Putin had told him the conflict was a special operation, not even a war, adding that the Ukrainian leader needed to cut a deal or face destruction. The official said that Trump told Zelensky he was losing the war, warning if Putin wants it, he will destroy you. At one point in the meeting, the U.S. president threw Ukraine's maps of the battlefield to one side. According to the official, Trump said he was sick of seeing the map of the front line of Ukraine again and again. This red line, I don't even know where this is. I've never been there, Trump said. Trump also said that Russia's economy is doing great, the official said in a sharp contrast to his recent public remarks. Trump just wants the war to end. He doesn't care on whose terms or where the map is. And the Russians are not negotiating. The Russians just keep telling Trump the exact same thing. Trump flails and withers and pontificates, but it doesn't mean anything. Ukraine's fortifications are at risk. Surrendering the Donbass would be a gift to the battle-tested Russians. And what the Russians are telling Trump is, force Ukraine to give us all of Donetsk, and then we will stop talking about taking Zaporizhia and Kherson, and then we'll start the process of negotiating a ceasefire, maybe. We're not promising to end the war. We will begin the process of a ceasefire as soon as Ukraine just gives us territory that we have failed to conquer after 11 years of war. So think about it. Russia is willing to give up territory they don't control in exchange for territory they don't control. And Trump is dumb enough to believe that's a good deal. This is nonsense. The population of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, these are cities of 100,000 and 150,000. That's 250,000 right there. In this region, there's probably close to 500,000 people. People's homes, people's farms, people's parents are buried in local cemeteries. These people are never going to surrender. They're never going to give up. They're never going to let the Russians take what is rightfully theirs. Putin knows this, and this is just a trap. Because these cities, there's kind of like two beltways here. These are some mid-sized towns going this direction. These are some larger cities along this highway over here. And if Russia can get past these defensive lines that Ukraine has spent a decade building, it's kind of just open air, open fields. If the Russians were given Donetsk, they could then press to threaten Dnipro from the east, a city of 1 million, and threaten Kharkiv from the south, a city of 2 million. So no, Ukraine is never going to agree to this. But Trump's an idiot, and he tried to curse at and pressure and bully Zelensky into just giving Russia more. But Zelensky told Trump no. Moscow says its position is unchanged despite Trump push for a ceasefire at the current lines. The Russians aren't negotiating. Their maximalist demands from 3.5 years ago haven't changed. They're just saying, give us some territory, and then we'll start talking maybe about a ceasefire. That's insane. Not going to happen. Putin plans to meet Trump in Budapest. How will he get there? Trump announced on Friday that he was going to meet with Putin and Viktor Orban in Hungary, and this would be a very strange flight for Putin to take. He would have to go over the Black Sea, then go over Turkey, around Greece, through Bosnia, through Serbia, to get to Bucharest. And honestly, I think if Putin tried to do this, Ukraine would take a shot at him, try and shoot down the plane. This is just too convenient, too close, if the real Putin even bothered to show up. So this was pointed out that there's a subtle irony here to planning a summit in Budapest. Maybe you've heard of that memorandum before, but the White House didn't like being called out on this. Your mom chose Budapest for peace talks, White House press secretary tells reporter. This is the official White House press secretary, and in response to a journalist from the Huffington Post asking her, whose idea was it to have a meeting in Budapest, given the sensitivity of America violating its agreements in the Budapest Memorandum? And she just simply replied, your mom. And then she released the text message, defending herself, just attacking the journalist, when this is entirely a fair question. But this is the level of discourse and dialogue coming from this White House. They're just going to tell your mom jokes. Your mom. My government is run by 12-year-olds. Actually, that's kind of insulting to 12-year-olds. This is just stupid, guys. Ukraine or Europe's role in the Trump-Putin summit is currently unclear. So the Europeans, aside from Viktor Orban, are not invited to the summit, and neither is Ukraine. This is just going to be another love fest between Putin and Trump. Or at least that's what Trump was planning. Because I think the meeting's already been canceled because everyone hated the idea. No plans for Putin-Trump meeting in the immediate future because the Russians aren't negotiating. They're not planning to stop the war. They're going to start more wars in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and the Baltics. Putin plans on killing millions of more people to get his empire back. So the Europeans are scrambling Zelensky to join Coalition of the Willing next week in the UK. I'm sure European leaders are going to gather once again like we did months ago and say, Russia better to agree to something, otherwise we're going to do something. What is that something, guys? I don't know. Here's Jessica Berlin. Dear Europe, especially Germany, Stop obsessing over what Trump will or won't do. Hoping and praying America will step up so we don't have to is dangerously stupid. Step up yourself. Destroy Russia's war economy and give Ukraine what they need to win. Europe must defend Europe. Why have Taurus cruise missiles not been delivered? Why are European countries still buying Russian oil and gas? Why are ordinary Russian citizens still allowed to vacation and enjoy shopping in European capitals? Is your continent at war or not? I wish America could just solve all your problems, but Trump is currently destroying America. The Russians made sure Trump was elected president again for this exact situation. At the moment, Trump is currently demolishing the East Wing of the White House, built in 1902. The White House, which is the people's house, and Trump is leveling a section of it to build a grand ballroom to his own grandeur. Americans can't afford groceries. Americans can't afford rent. Americans can't afford health insurance premiums. And Donald Trump's #1 priority is building a $200 million gold-plated ballroom so that he can have all of his oligarch buddies and their mistresses and sugar babies come wine and dine and party at the White House. It's going to get dumber, and it's going to get more painful, and a lot of people in America are going to die the next 3 years. It's going to be bad. So thank you to all my fellow Americans that showed up to protest. No King's protests drew largest crowds in American history. 7 million people simultaneously protesting the government at the same time, on the same day, across thousands? Let's see here. 2,600 cities in America participated, holding No King's rallies to protest Donald Trump. This was the largest protest in American history. Obviously, the biggest crowds were in the biggest cities. This is New York City. This is Boston. This is Chicago, and being from Wisconsin, nobody's allowed to pick on Chicago except for us. I love the people of Chicago. I've been to Chicago numerous times, and at the moment, Trump has sent in his fascist goons to kill people. ICE is currently murdering people who resist being assaulted and abducted. These are U.S. citizens. Yes, they're targeting undocumented aliens, but they're just tackling and assaulting anybody with brown skin who speaks with a foreign accent. That is un-American to be anti-immigrant. I mean, I've harped on this in my last couple of videos. If you still support masked men with guns assaulting people in broad daylight, you're not my target audience. I'm sorry. You can just stop watching me. You're hopeless. I think you're a terrible person. There's a way to have strong borders and to secure your nation. This is not it. This is Trump creating a police state and normalizing this kind of fascist violence. And we're going to resist this. But it's going to be a struggle the next 3 years. This is the good news. Trump's approval rating is now at 37% and dropping. Fascism isn't popular when we still have free speech. And at the moment, we still do. I can still broadcast on YouTube and say whatever I want, for now. Though I'm sure at some point, Trump is going to put pressure on the tech giants to silence anyone who criticizes his regime. But for that, he needs emergency powers. He has to declare some kind of crisis and then invoke some obscure law, and then just say we're done. We're done with Congress, we're done with courts, we're done with elections. One man is supreme, and he has the final say over everything. Yeah, I don't want to live in that country, guys. I'm sorry. I'm ranting today. I'm fired up. So let's end this video once again thinking about Ukraine. This is what it's all about. Every day at 9 a.m., everyone in Ukraine pauses what they're doing for a moment of silence for the fallen heroes. This is Maidan Square in the capital city of Kyiv. Everyone stops their car to get out and recognize the ultimate sacrifice made by their defenders. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.